It's a Sunday morning here in Brighton in Pavilion Gardens Cafe, which in Brighton is Fringe venue number 1 during Brighton Fringe. But we're not during Brighton Fringe at the moment. We're building up towards the Edinburgh Fringe in terms of FringeReview's coverage. But I'm out and about before most people, and you can hear the noise of waking up city. Waking up city here in Brighton means you can certainly hear sometimes rubbish being collected. You can hear lorries arriving and doing deliveries, recycle bins being emptied. You can probably hear all of those things. In Brighton you'll hear seagulls flying over too, and you'll hear the noises of human and nature here in Pavilion Gardens. So if I just go silent for a moment, there is of course no silence, but some theatre venues are really silent and managed so well that when the lights go down, you can hear the hush, you can hear the shushing. People that arrive a little bit late after a time are not allowed in at all, but they are just gently allowed in, maybe at the back. We're not disturbed by too much light, and that allows a show's curtain to rise or lights to go up, and the first impression to be all that the company intended. And we have the science that proves that people either more or less consciously make judgments that become fairly fixed and might be quite deep for what follows in their experiences of a piece of theatre. So if it's done badly, if in the dark we hear props being dropped, subconscious voices in our head say this isn't going to be very good, they could have got that right, they haven't rehearsed it as well, if we're not being very generous. And even if we are being generous and open, it can still disturb us a little bit, and our attention just dips for a while. So you can design a play that doesn't need that, but a lot of drama particularly that needs the opening moments to be really clear and to assert themselves or to make that impression. We need to avoid at all costs the disruption of some of the noises in the background here. If I've come here just to hear the voices of nature, I'm going to be disappointed. As it happens, I particularly come here because I love the mix. I actually find my calm and attention in the mix of a few voices shouting, an engine revving up, maybe an aeroplane going overhead, and then the birds arriving and a little chirp of a bird, particularly a blackbird that comes and sits at our table. But that's my enjoyment here as an audience for this. In terms of the intention of you, if you want attention, then you're going to have the same disappointment in many Edinburgh Fringe venues. And it happens for a number of reasons. Sometimes it simply happens that the staffing of a venue are people that are not there year round, haven't got to know the venue very well. It can be they're not being paid a huge amount. It doesn't mean they're not professional, but it can mean they simply aren't bringing the full energy because they might have their own irritation that they're not being paid well for the work they're doing. And that certainly has come across in some venues at the Edinburgh Fringe and other Fringe festivals, and in the arts generally, that can often, despite brilliant work by unions such as Equity, can still be a bit exploited and underpaid, and it can simply mean that the ethos in the venue takes a while to find its level. Now, not all fringe venues are like that, and some absolutely find that moment of silence and have all of those skills and that commitment to ensure that what I'm going to call the important or sacred moments, the minute, the half a minute, even the first few seconds of lights up, is respected and honoured, and it means that the show can hit the ground running if that's its intention. But what can happen instead is that we have light bleed, suddenly it's noticed, suddenly somebody's trying to pull a curtain across. It can simply mean that the corridor outside is letting in people very, very late, and these pop-up venues which have got the rake of the seats on safe but fairly flimsy wood, so it's echoing and clonking on people's shoes, that as people squeeze in, there's often very, very little space to move as chairs have been packed in. As they squeeze in, you get apologies, you get the delay of phones being switched off, and the venue is small enough for that to light the whole venue. Is your moment isn't about hitting the ground running, it becomes about hitting the ground stumbling, falling over. It can simply happen with people bumping into each other because we haven't had long to get into the venue, and that's why I've said in other venues it's really important to recreate the dimensions in your rehearsal room back home and absolutely hit the ground running and know the space as well as possible, and during the get-in to really familiarise yourself, because if it is the case that the first few seconds or first few minutes are disproportionately important to what follows in terms of establishing immediately the mood, the intention, that we are asked to suspend our disbelief very, very quickly, because set has been minimized, that we don't have the lighting that we wanted. So we need the silence of tuning in, the silence of people leaning in and having nothing to worry about other than what's before them. That's really, really difficult. So I guess the obvious bit of advice is to get all of that right, is to absolutely simplify where you can, so that anything that can go wrong is less likely to go wrong. That your techies, sometimes you might need to use your own lighting tech if it's a complicated lighting schema, because you can't risk the lights not coming up just right. You can't risk the particularly the cue of a bit of music to be that bit late. It can simply be that coughs in the venues echo. So the other thing that you can do is take it as a creative opportunity to reignite your imagination. If it's devised, to redevise a bit. If there's a script, to think about, could you move something a little bit later? How can we ensure it's the lowest risk technically to get the lights up and to get the piece working, is to just reblock and rethink the opening bit so that it can absorb noise bleed, people coming in late, the clonking noises of people that are walking around, the difficulty of getting the lighting exactly right because we don't know our tech very well, we haven't had much time together, the placing of props, the entrances and exits. Is get the first few minutes right, and don't be over idealistic. Live pragmatically and realistically with the venue that you have. Work out what can go wrong, try and avoid it as much as possible, and respect as much as you can your work to give it its best chance in those first couple of minutes. A similar thing can happen at the end, which is, it may just be the play finishes, the piece ends and lights go down, and they might come up on applause, and get that right. Don't have the lights coming up and some people are already leaving because they thought they could and they weren't very clear. Don't have the lights come up tentatively, bring them up properly. Really rehearse that curtain call if that's what you're doing. If you decided to thank everybody, which I never recommend, but if that's what you want to do and give some more information about the show, the sort of tell your friend speech, do it tightly, do it really well, so that when people are leaving and they're going to talk about the show, maybe recommend it to friends, it's going to be the last thing that reviewers remember. Don't let that be the flaky bit, the bit that's clunky and goes wrong. So the opening and closing deserves a disproportionately larger amount of respect and attention, particularly in pop-up venues, particularly when impressions are often there in the beginning and the end, and the sandwich of everything in the middle can easily get forgotten, as the first and the last things are the things that impress most upon us.